Hello there, and welcome to this special boring history episode on the rather disturbing lives of the Knight Squire. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Make yourself comfortable. Dim the lights, breathe deeply, and let the weight of the day slowly lift from your shoulders. The world outside can wait. For now, you're stepping gently into a quieter place, a softer space tucked deep within the folds of time. Tonight, we find ourselves in the hush of a medieval dawn, where mist clings low to the ground like a sleeping beast, curling around the legs of horses and the worn boots of men too tired to care. The year is sometime in the 13th century, though it doesn't quite matter. In the world of castles and keeps, of muddy roads and slow-moving carts, time has a different rhythm, more circular than linear, more seasonal than scheduled. You are young, perhaps no more than 12 or 13 years of age, and already your life is tethered to a man whose name is spoken with hushed admiration and silent fear. A knight. Not a storybook knight with polished armor and flowing capes, but a real one. A flesh-and-blood warrior with scars that tell stories you're too afraid to ask about. And you, dear listener, are his squire. It began the way these things often did. Your family, minor nobles, not quite poor, but not quite rich, sent you off to another noble house for training. A foster arrangement, they called it. An opportunity. But it is not a child's opportunity. It is an obligation stitched into the fabric of your bloodline. A quiet understanding passed between fathers and lords, sealed with a nod and a farewell kiss on your forehead. You didn't cry when they left you. That would have been unbecoming, but the silence in your chest has never really left since that day. Your morning begins not with a rooster's call, but with the scrape of iron over stone. Your knight, ever early, is already sharpening his sword before the sun has properly risen. The sound is steady, rhythmic, like breathing made of metal. You rise from your straw-stuffed mattress, little more than a flattened sack, and stretch beneath your simple tunic. Your muscles are already sore from yesterday, and your knees ache in ways you didn't know they could. There is no fire in your room, just the memory of one. Cold clings to your bones like a second skin. You pad across the stone corridor, footsteps silent, and slip into the small armory where your knight awaits. He does not speak. He never does in the mornings. You take up the chainmail hauberk and begin the slow, deliberate task of oiling the links. Each tiny ring must be checked, one by one. A single rusted link could be a death sentence on the battlefield. You work in silence, only the occasional crackle from the coals in the forge breaking the quiet. Later, when the rest of the castle begins to stir, your duties expand. You serve at the table during breakfast, carefully ladling porridge into wooden bowls and slicing rounds of rough bread with a dull knife that never quite does its job. You carry jugs of weak ale, refill trenchers, and stand in silence behind your knight as he eats, in case he wants more or has need of something. He rarely does. His appetite is modest, but his expectations are not. Once the morning meal is done, the real labor begins. There are weapons to polish, armor to inspect, saddles to scrub, horses to brush. The knight's destrier, an enormous, dark-eyed creature with a temper as short as his master's is your daily challenge. You speak to him in low tones, brushing his coat in long, even strokes. He snorts and shifts, and once he kicked you hard enough to bruise your thigh for a week. But you keep at it. A knight's horse is his other half. To neglect him is to neglect the knight himself. The training yard is where the day truly stretches out. You follow your knight as he trains, lugging behind him a small chest of practice weapons and spare shields. He spars with other knights, sometimes against 2 or 3 at once, his movements swift and brutal. You watch and learn. That is your only reward, to observe, to note, and one day, when you're old enough, to mimic. For now, though, your practice is more humble. You are given a wooden sword and told to strike at a padded post until your arms give out, then to strike again and again. There is no praise for progress, no encouragement for effort, only repetition, only pain. The blisters on your palms open, weep, and harden into calluses. You don't complain. Complaining is for children, and you are no longer considered one. Midday brings a short rest. You steal a moment to sit beneath the shadow of a crumbling stone wall, chewing on a piece of hard cheese and dried apple, savouring the chance to breathe. Around you, the castle murmurs with quiet life, maids hanging linens, blacksmiths hammering iron, squires like you darting from errand to errand. The world moves slowly here, like molasses in winter. But it moves all the same. Your knight finds you shortly after and sends you to clean the latrines. This is not a punishment. It is just another task. You pinch your nose and get to work, scrubbing with coarse sand and water that's been hauled up from the well. The smell clings to your clothes no matter how hard you scrub. When you're finished, you wash your hands in a trough, rubbing them raw, though the stink never fully leaves. In the late afternoon, you assist the armourer. It is a special day. A new breastplate has arrived, forged by a renowned smith from a nearby town. It gleams, catching the fading sunlight like a mirror. You hold it carefully, your arms trembling under the weight, while your knight tests the fit. He grunts in approval. That grunt is more satisfaction than you've heard in weeks. Evening descends like a soft woolen cloak. The castle's torchlight flickers to life, casting golden halos against the cold stone walls. You accompany your knight to the hall once more, where supper is served. There is stew tonight, thin but hot, and your stomach growls with anticipation. You eat quickly, out of sight, from a smaller dish set aside for the servants. It is enough, just enough. After the meal, you follow him, again this time to the chapel. He kneels before the altar, head bowed, lips moving in a prayer you've never been taught. You kneel behind him, silent, a shadow. Your knees ache again, but you do not shift. Night finally falls fully, and with it comes the cleaning. Always the cleaning. You scrub his armour with vinegar and oil, pack away his gear, lay out his nightclothes, and finally retreat to your small cot in the squire's quarters. The other squires are already there. Some snoring, some whispering, stories in the dark. You pull the rough wool blanket up to your chest and close your eyes. You sleep lightly, always lightly. A squire must be ready to rise at a moment's notice. There may be a hunting call at dawn, a sudden summons from the Lord, or worse, a raid or news of war. But tonight, the night is still. The wind outside the stone walls hums like a lullaby, and somewhere in the distance an owl calls softly into the black. Your hands ache, your legs are sore, your back feels twisted from the day's work, but you have survived. And tomorrow you will do it all again. There is little glory in being a squire. Not the kind found in tales or sung in songs, but there is a rhythm to it, a kind of quiet service that forms the bones of a knight's world. Without you, his sword stays dull, his armor remains filthy, his horse goes unridden. You are the invisible thread that holds his world together. Still, you wonder sometimes, late at night, when sleep just begins to take you, if this life will ever become more, if the title of knight will one day belong to you, and with it, the right to choose your own squire. Or if you will remain forever in the background, oiling another man's shield, tending another man's wounds. You've seen what knighthood does to a man, the weight it brings, the solitude, the scars, and perhaps in your quietest moments you think, maybe this is already enough. Maybe being behind the sword is safer than wielding it. But that thought, like so many others, fades into the fabric of the night. A night scented with old wood, horse sweat, and the ever-present smell of burning tallow. The morning comes again, not with fanfare, but with the slow sigh of wind pushing against the castle walls. The stones are still cold when your bare feet touch the floor. The grey light that filters through the narrow slit of your window offers little warmth, but at least it signals that you've made it to another day. Outside, crows call lazily from the tower tops, as if waking too is an unwelcome chore. You rub your eyes, joints stiff from the chill, and quickly dress. Your tunic smells faintly of smoke and sweat. There is never quite enough water for proper washing. Your belt is a bit too tight from the swelling where a horse brushed you hard against a post yesterday, but you say nothing. These are not things one complains about. Your knight is already moving. Of course he is. He always wakes before you do, as though sleep is a luxury he long gave up. You find him seated by the hearth in the armoury chamber, binding the handle of his sword with new leather strips. He glances at you once, but says nothing. That's all the greeting you'll receive. You begin your tasks without being told. The rhythm is etched into your bones by now. You tend to his boots first, scraping away the dried mud and oiling the leather. You line up his armour pieces in the proper order. Greaves, cuisses, breastplate, gorget, each arranged like a silent puzzle. Then you kneel beside the hearth and heat water in a dented copper basin, so he might wash his hands before the day begins in earnest. Today, your knight has planned a hunt, not for sport, but for service. The Lord's table needs fresh meat, and the forest beyond the fields teems with wild boar and stubborn deer. It is not a task you enjoy. The forest is damp and treacherous, and the animals rarely go quietly. But as a squire, you go where he goes. Always, you saddle the destrier with care. The horse rolls his eyes at you, but does not rear. That, in itself, feels like a kind of victory. You check the girth strap twice. Then you lead him into the courtyard, his heavy hooves thudding against the cobblestones. Your knight emerges shortly after, dressed in a riding cloak with a longbow slung over one shoulder. He mounts with ease, movements fluid as water. You take a smaller horse, a lean, wiry gelding with a temper, but you do not ride at his side. You ride just behind, ever behind, one horse's length away, close enough to hear his commands, but far enough not to presume companionship. The path into the forest is slow and meandering. The morning mist has yet to lift, curling between the trees like drifting smoke. You hear the rustle of leaves, the snapping of twigs beneath hooves, the distant cry of some unseen bird. It is peaceful, in its own quiet way. A lull in your otherwise rigid life. The hunt itself is less so. Your knight tracks a boar with the ease of someone who has done this many times before. He spots signs, scrapes on bark, disturbed earth, dung still steaming. You watch as he notches an arrow and releases it in one smooth breath. The arrow flies true, and the squeal that follows is short but shrill. The boar does not die quickly. You are sent to finish it off, dagger in hand, and though your hands tremble, you obey. The blade sinks in just below the throat, and warm blood coats your fingers sticky and thick. The smell is sour, earthy. You try not to breathe through your nose. Later, you help bind the carcass to your horse's back. It is heavier than it looks, and your arms burn with the strain. Still, you say nothing. The ride back is slower, the smell of blood trailing behind you, drawing curious glances from the crows that circle overhead. Once you return to the castle, your knight vanishes into the hall to report to the lord. You take the carcass to the kitchens. The cook, a large, sharp-tongued woman with arms like hams, sniffs and nods approvingly. "Fat one?" she mutters. "Well shot." You bow your head, even though it wasn't your arrow. The rest of the day blurs into chores. Cleaning, tack, sharpening weapons, fetching firewood. The smith calls on you to help pump the bellows as he reforges a broken axe head. The forge is unbearably hot. Your arms ache from turning the crank, but you persist. Sweat drips from your brow and sizzles against the stone floor. The heat and the rhythmic clang of hammer on metal make you feel like your very bones are vibrating. Eventually, you are dismissed, not kindly, just with a wave. You return to your knight's chamber to prepare his gear for tomorrow. You lay out his clothing, refill his wash basin, and unroll the oiled leather bundle that holds his whetstone and cloths. You begin sharpening his sword, as he prefers it done knightly. The rasp of steel against stone is a sound that has settled into your very dreams. Your fingers move without thought now. You know the angle, the pressure, the repetition. You sometimes wonder what else your hands could have learned, had they not been claimed so early by this life. Music, maybe, or ink and quill, but the sword is your master now. As you work, your mind drifts. You think of your family. It has been over a year since you last saw them. A letter came once, carried by a travelling merchant. Your mother's handwriting, careful and neat. She asked how you were faring, and mentioned the harvest had been poor. But spirits were high. She sent her love. You read the letter 3 times, then folded it and tucked it under your thin mattress. It is still there, a secret comfort. The sun begins to set, and with it comes a strange sort of calm. The castle's walls seem to soften in the dying light. Torches flicker to life, their flames dancing gently in iron sconces. You finish polishing the sword and return it to its scabbard, then begin tidying the chamber. There's a knock at the door, sharp and short. You open it to find one of the steward's boys with a message. Your knight has been summoned to a council meeting. You are to accompany him. You nod, relay the message, and begin dressing him in his formal attire. Chain beneath tunic, surcoat, embroidered with his house sigil, his boots brushed clean of dust. You trail him through the long corridors, your footsteps echoing softly behind his. The great hall is dimly lit, candles guttering in the high chandeliers. Lords and knights murmur around a long table, maps spread before them. You stand at the wall, silent, unseen. The meeting is long and filled with words you do not understand. Terms of land, trade disputes, troop movements. There is talk of a nearby rebellion. Nothing urgent yet. But the air in the hall feels tight, like something is coiling beneath the surface. Your knight says little, but his eyes are sharp. He listens closely. Occasionally, he nods. At one point, he looks over his shoulder, meeting your gaze just briefly. Then he returns to the matter at hand. When the meeting ends, the castle has gone quiet. It is late. The servants have retired. The kitchens are dark. You walk in silence beside your knight back to his chamber. He says nothing until he is at the door, where he finally speaks. There may be war. You nod. You don't ask questions. You've heard enough in the meeting to guess the shape of what's to come. He pauses, then adds, "You'll need to be ready." You swallow hard. "Yes, my lord." He enters, and the door closes softly behind him. You return to the Squire's, quarters mind heavy with those 4 words. You'll need to be ready. Sleep does not come easily. You lie on your side, staring at the ceiling, listening to the breathing of the others. You think of the battlefield, not in the way it's described in poems, but in the way you've heard it whispered about by wounded soldiers who return with missing limbs and eyes that never quite refocus. You think of steel meeting steel, of screaming horses, of banners torn and muddied by the trample of boots. You wonder if you will carry your knight's sword into the fray, or if you will be sent to drag the injured back behind the lines. You wonder if you'll live long enough to become a knight yourself. Eventually, exhaustion wins and you drift off. In your dreams, the forest returns. You're chasing something through the trees, but every time you get close, it slips further away. A shadow with no name. You run until your legs ache, and still, it's always just out of reach. Morning comes again, as it always does, and you rise, as you always do. You find your knight not in the armory, but in the chapel. He is kneeling, sword before him, eyes closed. You stand at the threshold, waiting. When he rises, he seems older somehow, more tired. He nods to you, and you follow. Today, there is a different kind of urgency in the castle. The smith is repairing armor, not for show, but for use. Archers are counting arrows. The stable hands are brushing war horses, fitting them with caparisons and reinforced saddles. You are given your own tasks, running messages, checking equipment, helping fasten chainmail on men far larger than you. No one speaks unless necessary. The castle is quiet, but not peacefully so. It is the hush before thunder. Later, you overhear 2 men whispering by the well. There was a skirmish to the east, a small one, but real. Blood has been spilled, lines have been drawn, and your knight has been chosen to lead a patrol in that direction. You carry this knowledge silently. You do not show fear. But that night, as you polish the sword one final time, your hands shake just a little. And so, as the torches burn low and the wind hums through the castle towers, your path as a squire stretches ever onward. Tougher, heavier, but still yours to walk. The day arrives with a different flavor in the air. One you can't name at first, only feel. A quiet kind of anticipation, thick and slow, like honey left too long in the cold. Outside, the sky is a flat grey, and even the birds seem hesitant to sing. Your boots strike the stone corridor more softly today, as if the castle itself is holding its breath. You find your knight in the outer bailey, already mounted, inspecting the line of men who will ride with him on patrol. They wear leather and chain, helms tucked under their arms, faces grim with focus. A cart stacked with spare provisions is being hitched behind them. Dried meat, hard bread, a small keg of weak ale, all covered with a cloth that flaps lazily in the wind. You stand at your knight's side, waiting for his word. He doesn't speak. He only nods once, and with that, you mount your horse and take your place among the others. Not among the knights, of course. You are still a shadow. You ride behind, as always. Your task is not to fight, not yet. It is to observe, to learn, to carry, to obey. The gates creak open, and you pass beneath the stone arch into the wider world beyond the walls. The forest awaits, no longer peaceful, no longer a place of quiet hunts and drifting mist. Now it is a corridor of possibility, filled with the scent of wet leaves and the distant memory of danger. The trees are thicker here, and even the light seems thinner, filtered through a canopy that keeps the sun just out of reach. Hours pass in silence. The patrol moves with a rhythm. Stop, listen, advance, wait. Birds scatter when you pass, and once you spot the flash of a fox's tail disappearing into the underbrush. But otherwise, the forest is still. At midday, the group halts by a stream to water the horses. You dismount, help untie the waterskins, and kneel beside the brook to drink. The cold water shocks your teeth, but it clears your head. Your knight crouches beside you, eyes scanning the tree line. He seems less like a nobleman here, and more like the wolf the bards sing of. Quiet, lean, always watching. You travel onward. The sky darkens slowly, even though it is not yet late. Clouds roll, in low and heavy, bringing the scent of rain, and with the rain comes the first sign of trouble. It's subtle. A crushed boot print in the mud, half covered by leaves. Your knight notices it first. He dismounts, crouches low, brushes aside the debris. He beckons for the others. They gather around, murmuring softly, eyes narrowing. There are more prints nearby, not recent, but not old either. Maybe a day, maybe less. You are told to stay with the horses as the knights advance, swords drawn. You obey, heart thudding in your chest. You stand beside the animals, fingers tangled in the reins, listening to the wind stir the trees. Airy. Sound seems louder now. The groan of branches, the rustle of leaves, the distant snap of a twig. Time stretches. You don't know how long they are gone. 10 minutes, 20, an hour. Then they return. No enemies in sight, but the signs are clear. Someone has passed through here recently. Perhaps a scouting party, perhaps bandits, or perhaps the rebels spoken of during the council. Your knight says little, but you can see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tap against the hilt of his sword, even when sheathed. You ride back in silence, faster this time. The wind picks up, and with it, the rain finally arrives. A slow drizzle at first, then heavier, soaking your cloak and chilling you to the bone. The mud makes the horses slip, their hooves dragging deep ruts in the trail. You grip the saddle tightly, rain running down your face like tears you haven't earned. By the time the castle walls rise again before you, you are soaked and aching. You help the others unsaddle the horses, rub them down, hang the bridles to dry. The stable smells like damp hay and wet leather. You don't complain. You don't speak. You just keep working. That evening, you join your knight in his chamber, helping him remove his armor, drying each piece carefully. The fire crackles weakly in the hearth, unable to drive the chill completely away. He sits in silence, staring at the flames. There will be more, he said suddenly. More scouting, more riding, maybe even blood. You nod, not because you understand, but because he expects you to. He adds, "You did well today. You were quiet. You watched. That is the highest praise you've received yet. You hold on to it like a stone in your pocket, a small weight that somehow feels like a treasure." In the coming days, the castle prepares. More knights arrive. Some come alone, others with squires of their own. You meet boys older than you, younger than you. All of them bear the same look, the look of someone who has seen too much, too soon. You exchange quiet greetings, share food in the squire's hall, compare bruises like war medals, but no one speaks of fear, not out loud. Training intensifies. You now spar daily with other squires. Wooden swords crack against each other, and every blow leaves a fresh mark. You learn how to take a fall, how to roll, how to strike not with rage, but with purpose. Your hands grow tougher, your stance more steady. The knight's training is working its way into your bones. One afternoon, your knight calls you to the field beyond the castle gate. There is no audience, no pageantry, just the two of you, a wooden dummy, and a real sword. Not sharpened, but real nonetheless. "Swing," he says, "like you mean it." You do, again and again. He corrects your form, adjusts your grip, tells you when to move your feet, when to lead with your hips. Hours pass, your arms burn, your back aches, you nearly collapse from exhaustion. But you do not stop. When you finally lower the sword, panting, he nods once. "Again tomorrow," he says. That night sleep comes quickly. You dream of steel and wind and your own reflection in the polished surface of a helm that has yet to belong to you. Days bleed into one another. You ride out again, shorter patrols, closer to the castle. You fetch and carry, polish and scrub. You watch, you listen. You begin to see things differently. How a knight moves through the world. How he speaks when he chooses silence over words. You are learning not just his habits, but his shape. How to become something like him one day. And then, one evening, something shifts. A rider arrives at twilight, his horse lathered, his face pale. He speaks to the steward in hushed tones. The steward nods and disappears up the spiral stairs. Minutes later, the bell is rung. Not the high chime for supper, but the deep toll that signals readiness. The men gather. You help your knight into his armor, your fingers steady despite the tension in the air. This time there is no preamble. "We ride at first light," he says. You nod. Of course. You pack his satchel. Spare gloves, flint, whetstone, a cloth for cleaning the blade. You lay everything out in the proper order. You polish his helm until it shines like water under moonlight. Sleep is fleeting that night. You lie awake, listening to the muffled footsteps of men preparing in the dark. Horses stir in the stables. The wind whispers through the cracks in the stone. You close your eyes and imagine yourself already on the road again. Dust rising behind you, sword at your side, and then morning comes. The courtyard fills with knights and men-at-arms. The air smells of oil and iron, of boiled leather and nervous sweat. Banners are fastened to lances. Saddle straps are tightened. You stand at your knight's side, holding his shield, waiting. He turns to you once, just before mounting. "Today, you ride with me, not behind." You blink, then nod. Your horse is brought forward. Smaller than the war horses, but steady. You mount carefully, heart pounding. You line up beside your knight. The gates open, and for the first time you ride not in shadow, but in step. And so, as the soft morning light touches your cheek, and the forest once more swallows your path, your journey through the quiet burdens of knighthood deepens, not with glory, but with weight, and with the silent courage of those who serve before they are ever seen. The road is long and strangely quiet, muffled by the fog that clings low over the meadows. It coils around the hooves of your horse and creeps between the folds of your cloak, dampening every sound until even the creak of leather and the soft clink of chainmail seems far away, as though coming from another world. You ride at your knight's side as he ordered, not behind. This is new, this is different, but it doesn't feel like pride, not really. It feels like being called to attention, like stepping into a circle of firelight you once only watched from afar. And now that you're in it, you feel smaller, not larger. The patrol moves steadily. Forward. Your knight does not speak, but then he rarely does. His gaze remains fixed on the trees that line the road, on the dips and bends ahead, on the invisible threat that all seem to sense, but none have yet seen. Around you ride other knights, and their squires, some muttering quietly to one another, some silent like you. The horses breathe heavily through their noses, sensing the tension as only animals can. By mid-morning, the fog has begun to lift, but the clouds remain. Pale and heavy, they cast the world in a soft, colourless wash, like a tapestry faded by time. You pass through a small hamlet, barely more than a scattering of wattle and daub cottages and a smokehouse. Chickens cluck nervously from behind woven fences. A woman peers from behind a wooden shutter, her eyes wide and tired. A child clutches her apron and stares as you pass. The village gives no cheers. There are no garlands or cries of welcome, only silence. You begin to understand that even the sight of knights is no comfort anymore. Not in times like these, especially not now. You break for a meal beside a copse of yew trees. The knights eat salted pork and rye bread, drink from their water skins, say little. You chew your share carefully, grateful for anything warm. your stomach still unsure whether to accept food or reject it. Nearby, your knight is cleaning his dagger with a cloth, his face unreadable. Then movement. A rider appears over the hill, not part of your company. Dusty, frantic. He shouts before reaching the camp. You don't catch all the words, but you see the effect. Your knight stands at once, sword belted, eyes sharp. The others rise as well. Something has happened. Not far from here, too close. Orders come quickly. The knights mount. You are told to stay close. The patrol divides, some going east to secure the road, others west toward a burned watchtower. You ride with the latter. It's not long before the smell reaches you. Smoke and something beneath it, thicker, metallic, unmistakable. The scent of blood. The watchtower comes into view through a thinning veil of mist. Or what's left of it? Charred wood leans at odd angles. The ground is scorched black. A few bodies lie nearby. Soldiers, judging by their boots and scattered. Weapons, you dismount automatically, numb. Your knight does the same. The scene is silent, but for the distant cry of crows. You are told to search the perimeter. You obey, moving slowly, eyes down. You find a broken shield, a dropped dagger, a crushed helmet with a dent so deep it has split like a melon. You do not lift the cloth that covers the largest shape by the fire pit. You don't need to. You already know. Someone kneels beside a set of tracks in the mud. Fresh, deep, multiple. Too many for a single group. Your knight comes to see. Hichiu says nothing. But you see how his jaw tightens. The sky darkens as the clouds thicken again. A drizzle begins, soft but insistent. Like the earth itself is sighing. The bodies are buried quickly. There is no time for proper rites. You help dig, though the soil is heavy and clotted. You do not cry. You do not speak. Only when it's over do you feel the weight of what has happened settle into your shoulders like a mantle made of iron. That night, you camp on the edge of the woods, far from the ruins. Fires are kept low. No singing, no laughter, just quiet murmurs. Armor being repaired, arrows counted again and again. You lie beneath your cloak, staring at the grey sky, listening to the wind rustle the leaves. Sleep does not come easily. Every time your eyes begin to close, the memory of the tower returns. The shape of a hand protruding from blackened timber, a half-melted buckle, the silence. Your knight does not sleep either. You glance over to see him seated near the fire, blade resting across his knees, his face lit only by the glow of embers. He looks not like a hero, but like something carved from stone, weathered, unmoving. At some point, just before dawn, he speaks. Not all who die out here get songs. You don't respond. There's nothing to say. The next day brings more riding, more mud, more silence. Your legs ache, your eyes burn, but you press on. The horses grow nervous as you near a bend in the trail, and sure enough, your group halts. One of the scouts has spotted something. Tracks, dozens of them, leading into a narrow glen. The knights dismount, tying their horses to low branches. Your knight looks at you. Stay behind me. You nod. The descent into the glen is slow, careful. Every twig that cracks beneath a boot feels like a bell tolling in the quiet. You grip the small dagger at your belt, more for comfort than readiness. The trees lean close together here, their branches knit into a canopy that makes it feel like walking underwater. Then, movement. A shadow between trunks. A figure darts, and in that breath of silence, arrows fly. Not at you, not yet, but close enough to hear the whistle. The knights charge, steel sings. You do not follow. You crouch behind a fallen log, heart pounding. You were told to stay behind. And so you do. The sounds of battle are muffled. Grunts, metal on metal, the bark of commands. You grip the log so tightly your knuckles ache. You do not run. You do not cry. You wait. Eventually, the sounds die away. Footsteps approach. Your knight appears, helmet off, face streaked with mud. A shallow cut bleeds slowly from his cheek. He helps you to your feet. Come, the fight is over. Several figures lie still in the grass, rebels perhaps, or bandits. It doesn't matter now. One of the knights is injured. You are sent to help bind his leg with strips of cloth. Your hands shake at first, but steady as you work. The knight groans, but nods when you finish. When the company regathers fewer than before, your knight looks at you once more. You stayed. Put. Good. That too is praise. The return to the castle is quiet. No one speaks unless necessary. The wounded are brought in first, then the others. You help carry gear, unsaddle horses, clean blood from armor. You do not ask questions. Yoshiri, do not tell anyone how your stomach turned when you saw the bodies, or how your legs nearly gave out when you smelled the blood. You just keep moving. Later, in the armory, you kneel beside your knight's sword and begin cleaning it as always. The smell of oil and metal soothes you in some strange way, as if reminding you that some things are still in order. He sits nearby, removing his gauntlets slowly. You'll see worse, he says softly. You nod, not because you want to, but because you know it's true. That night you lie in your cot and stare at the ceiling again, but this time your eyes do not stay open as long. Your body gives in before your mind can resist, and for the first time in days, you sleep without dreams. The next morning, life resumes. The kitchen still bakes its bread. The smith's hammer still rings through the air. The castle lives, even with the weight of death still hanging just beyond the walls. You fetch water. You polish boots. You carry messages. Your knight trains with the others. You join the squires in the practice yard, sparring under the eye of a knight with a limp and a sharp tongue. And yet something has changed. You no longer watch with wide eyes. You no longer flinch at every clash of wood against wood. You are not hardened, not yet. But the edge of your fear has dulled. That night, your knight shares a piece of roasted meat with you by the fire. He says little. You say less. But something unspoken passes between you. Not friendship, not equality, but something closer to trust. And so, as the wind drifts gently across the battlements, and the candles burn low in the sconce above your head, your path continues, still quiet, still heavy. But now it carries the shape of something new. Resilience. A thread of steel, not yet a blade, but forming. The rhythm of the castle does not wait for morning. It moves forward, step by slow, grinding step, as though sorrow were just another burden to be carried. Life continues in its quiet cycles. Grain to mill, flour to oven, bread to table. The hounds are still fed, the stables still mucked, the candles still trimmed. and so are you. In the days following the glen, you settle into a new kind of stillness. Not the quiet of ignorance, but the hush of understanding. You've seen what it means to serve a knight, beyond polish and pageantry. You've smelled smoke in your hair and wiped blood from a sword that wasn't yours. The air you breathe now feels heavier somehow, not darker, just older. Your body bears the signs of this shift. The bruises on your arms fade slower. The blisters on your palms have turned to calluses. Your gait is steadier. The aches don't stop, but they stop surprising you. And with every quiet morning, your knight's expectations stretch further. He no longer waits for you to follow. He simply moves, and you are there, as though you've learned to mirror his steps before he makes them. In a way, you have. Today, you're up before the sun. The sky is the soft colour of soot, the stars barely clinging to their last breaths. You carry a small lantern down the corridor, its flicker casting wobbly shadows across the stone. The castle is sleeping still, deeply, heavily, but you are already in motion. You're to ride out again this morning. Not with the full patrol this time, just your knight and a small escort of 2 others. The village 3 leagues south has sent word of strangers seen near the riverbank. Strangers with poor manners and dangerous eyes. It might be nothing. It might be more. In the stables, the horses are already being saddled. Yours greets you with a low snort, and you pat his neck, murmuring your usual greeting. His hide is warm in the morning chill. You tighten the girth, check the saddle straps, and adjust the bit gently in his mouth. You're more comfortable in the saddle now. Not graceful yet, but secure. Your knight appears just as the sky begins to lighten. He's not in full mail today. Just a leather gambeson under his cloak, sword at his side. He moves with quiet precision, always composed like his breath never quickens. He nods to you, a silent signal. Mount up, the ride is brisk. Hooves thud softly against the wet road, mist rising in little curls from the forest's edge. The 2 guards ride a little behind, murmuring occasionally to one another, but your knight does not speak. Neither do you. The silence between you feels natural now, like an old coat worn smooth at the elbows. When you reach the village, there are no cries of greeting, only wary faces peeking from behind doors, eyes wide with unspoken fear. The reeve meets you near the church steps, his hands wringing a cap that's already lost its shape. He tells the tale in quiet tones. 2 nights ago, someone tried to break into the grain store. No goods were taken, but the lock was broken and muddy boot prints were found by the door. Then yesterday, a goat vanished. A child said she saw men near the river. Tall, cloaked, not from here. No one's been harmed, not yet. But something is wrong. You can feel it in the way the people stand. In tight clusters, shoulders hunched, voices hushed like prayer. Your knight asks few questions. He walks the edge of the grain store, inspects the lock, follows the trail of prints to where they vanish. Into the reeds, you follow him without needing to be told. He stops now and then, picking up signs the way a falcon might notice wind. A snapped twig, a disturbed patch of earth, the faint drag of something heavy across stones. He says little, just, there were 3, and moves on. You pass the rest of the day scanning the riverbank, listening to the rustle of wind in the tall grasses, eyes sharp for signs of movement. Nothing comes. The strangers, if they were ever here, are long gone. By mid-afternoon, your knight signals to return. The village offers thanks in quiet tones. One old woman presses a scrap of cloth into your hand, a square of linen with a stitched knot at the corner. For luck, she says. You tuck it into your belt without a word. The ride back is slower, more thoughtful. Your knight seems deep in thought, his posture a little tighter than usual. You know better than to ask why. When the castle comes back into view, its towers grey against a grey sky, you feel an unexpected pull of relief. It's strange how this place, once so cold and unfamiliar, has begun to feel like safety, like rhythm, like something known. That night, after the horses are brushed and the saddles hung, you polish your knight's boots while he reviews a scroll of correspondence by firelight. The chamber is warm, the shutters drawn tight against the chill. Plate of roasted onions and bread sits untouched nearby, steam curling into the air like a whisper. Without looking up, he speaks. You're learning. It's not a question, not even a compliment, just a statement of fact. Still, your chest warms slightly, he adds, but there's more to learn. You nod, you know, and so it continues. The following weeks pass in quiet repetition. Each day a lesson. Each night a test of your ability to absorb without breaking. You assist in inspections, train in the yard, fetch scrolls from the steward's chamber, deliver messages across the castle, always moving, always useful. Sometimes you forget your own name. You are boy, Squire, you. And yet, there's a strange kind of freedom in that. No one expects your opinion. No one asks for your dreams. You exist in service, and that is enough. For now, your knight has begun teaching you things he never explained before. How to read a banner in the distance. How to judge a horse's fatigue by its ears. How to walk in mail without sounding like a rattle. You listen closely. You practice when no one's watching. One evening, you are called to the great hall. A feast is underway. A visiting lord from the east. You serve wine and roast capon, refill goblets, wipe spills. The laughter is loud, the fire high, the food rich, but you eat only afterward in the kitchen, gnawing on a bone left behind by a careless hand. Later that night, your knight finds you in the armory. He says nothing of the feast, just gestures to the bench. Sit. He brings out a sword, not his own, but a smaller one. He places it on your lap. The weight surprises you. It's not ceremonial, not a plaything, it's real. You'll train with this now. Your throat tightens. You nod. Carefully, reverently, you lift it and feel the weight shift in your palm. You'll carry it, he says, but only draw when told. Again, you nod. Of course, the next morning, you rise earlier than ever. You carry your new blade in its scabbard, slung awkwardly at your hip. It bruises your thigh when you walk, but you wear it all day. You sleep with it beside your cot. The other squires glance at you differently now, not with envy, not quite, but with recognition, as though you've passed some invisible threshold. Still, there are no celebrations, no songs, just more work. More quiet steps in a life that demands endurance more than glory. One afternoon, The armourer allows you to help fit a full suit of mail. He shows you how to distribute the weight. Shoulders first, then waist, never too tight at the joints. You lift each piece with care, noting the dents and repairs, the way each link moves like water when properly oiled. You've come to love the smell of steel and wool, the feel of leather under your fingertips. Evenings pass in quiet reading. Your knight lends you a book, an old one, its pages softened with age, Latin mostly, but some passages in the common tongue. Tales of sieges, of cold winters, of squires who never became knights, but who mattered all the same. Sometimes you wonder which one you'll be, but that thought never lingers long. The days are too full, the world too wide. And so the castle turns onward, seasons shifting, leaves curling at the edges, nights growing longer. Fires burn brighter in the hearths, and you find comfort in the repetition. In the scouring of pots, the brushing of coats, the tending of wounds and words. You are tired, but not broken. You are learning, but not yet ready. You are a squire. And so, as the fire flickers low and your blade rests quietly at your side, your journey carries you forward, one small step at a time, toward a path that is both your duty and your burden. It is the cold that wakes you this time, not the bells, not your knight's voice, just the cold, seeping in beneath the door, curling under your blanket, settling between your bones. You shift under your thin covers and blink up at the ceiling, beams above your cot, watching the slow breath of torchlight flickering through the cracks in the shutters. Winter is not yet here, not fully, but its fingertips have begun to trace the stones, testing them. And when the cold comes to a castle like this, it doesn't announce itself with snowstorms or howling wind. It simply settles in quietly and waits. You rise, feet slipping into stiff boots. Your tunic is cold to the touch, but you grit your teeth and pull it over your head. At your side, other squires begin to stir, grumbling softly as they shuffle toward the hallway. The floor is icy underfoot, even with your socks, and the air has the sharp scent of iron and old wood. You light a small lantern and make your way down the passage, heading towards the outer stair that leads to the training yard. Today is a weapons inspection day. That means early drills, full armor checks, and standing still in the frost while the quartermaster frowns at scuffed greaves. The courtyard glows pale blue in the dawn light, touched by a thin veil of mist. You can see your breath. As you exhale, see it drifting in little clouds. The other squires gather in small knots, stomping their feet to stay warm. The knights stand off to the side, wrapped in thick cloaks, speaking in low tones. Your knight is there too, though he never bothers with extra layers. He stands with his arms crossed, expression unreadable, sword at his side as always. You toward him with the quiet purpose of someone who no longer needs to ask what's expected. He gives you a nod and says simply, "Shield drills." And so you begin. The practice is long and cold. You square off against another squire, older, stronger, and raise your shield as instructed. The blows come hard and fast, not real strikes, but hard enough to bruise. Each one rattles your arm, jolting through your bones. You grit your teeth and keep your stance. Raise, absorb, counter, again. Your hands are numb by the end of the hour. The skin on your knuckles is split, tiny cracks blooming red. You're allowed a short break, just enough time to gulp down lukewarm water and chew on a chunk of rye bread. But then it's back to the line, this time for sword forms. You move through the sequence slowly at first. Downward cut, lateral, sweep, defensive block, reset. Again, the movements are carved into you now, like grooves in stone. Your body knows the rhythm, even as your muscles complain. By the time the bell tolls for midday, your tunic is damp with sweat despite the cold. Your arms ache, your knees tremble slightly, but you've kept up. You've stayed on your feet, and when your knight glances at you across the yard, he gives the faintest nod of approval. It is, strangely, enough to make the pain worthwhile. The afternoon brings a change of pace. You're summoned to help tend the armory, a task less glamorous, but no less important. You oil blades, check buckles, replace worn leather straps. The armourer grunts instructions at you, but doesn't hover anymore. He trusts you now. Or at least, he doesn't expect you to ruin anything. That's close enough. While you work, you overhear news from a travelling messenger. A minor siege has ended to the north. A fortified village taken after 3 days. No major casualties, but tensions are rising again. You feel a small coil of unease wind through your gut. Another campaign. Another call to arms. You don't ask. But your mind keeps spinning. That evening, as you carry your knights cleaned, sword back to his chamber, you find him seated by the fire, sharpening a smaller blade, a dagger you haven't seen him use before. He looks up as you enter. They've asked for a detachment. The Lord wants me to lead it. You freeze. When? 3 days. You nod, setting the sword gently down on the rack. You start unbuckling your satchel, but your thoughts are already racing. 3 days. That's barely enough time to prepare. Your knight continues. You'll come. Of course. You nod again, slower this time. Of course. The next few days move with quiet urgency. Provisions are packed, horses selected, weapons double-checked. You're assigned to gather spare tack and fit saddle rolls for the men. You work, alongside other squires, some joking nervously, others silent with focus. The castle seems more alive now, like it knows something is shifting. The kitchens bustle, the smith's hammer rings late into the night. At every corner, someone is preparing. Night before departure, you barely sleep. You lie on your cot, staring at the ceiling, fingers laced behind your head. Around you, the chamber is full of soft breathing, the occasional creak of a bed frame. You turn over the words again in your mind. A detachment. A march. You'll come. The morning is colder still, the wind biting even beneath your cloak. The small company gathers in the courtyard. 10 knights, 15 men-at-arms, and 5 squires. Each is bundled against the cold, faces drawn. There's no ceremony, no fanfare, just a gate slowly creaking open. You mount your horse with practiced ease, your sword belted at your side. Your knight rides at the front, his posture relaxed but alert. You fall into formation behind him, boots snug in the stirrups, reins held, steady. The road stretches ahead, grey and narrow, lined with bare trees. You follow without hesitation. The march is steady, quiet. You stop at a wayside shrine before midday. just long enough to water the horses and stretch your legs. A carved figure of St. Maurice watches from beneath a moss-covered stone arch, his spear raised, his face worn smooth by time. Some of the men cross themselves, others just nod. You ride on. By evening, you reach the edge of a forest clearing where camp is to be made. You help unpack gear, gather firewood, and pitch canvas. The wind whispers through the trees, and the smell of wood smoke rises into the darkening sky. You eat bread and cheese beside your knight, both of you silent as the fire crackles. The stars come out slowly, faint pinpricks against the inky blue. Somewhere in the distance an owl calls. Your knight speaks, his voice low. You'll carry dispatches this time, to and from the forward scouts. That means riding alone. Your mouth is suddenly dry. Yes, my lord. You know the paths. You nod. You do. He doesn't ask if you're ready. He just assumes that next morning you're given the first message, a sealed scroll tied with red ribbon. It's to be delivered to the lookout post 2 leagues ahead, where a second company is camped. You ride with only your cloak, your blade, and a satchel. The road is narrow, frostbitten, the trees tall and still. Every hoofbeat sounds too loud. Every gust of wind makes your heart jump. But you press on. You deliver the scroll. You wait for the reply. You return, and you do it again the next day. And the day after, each time, you ride a little straighter. Breathe a little slower. Each time, you become less a boy pretending to be brave, and more a squire who knows what's needed. You never draw your sword. Not once. But it's there. Your side, silent, steady, a promise. One night, after the final dispatch has been carried, your knight calls you to his fire. He hands you a small bundle. Inside is a pair of leather gloves, worn but well made. Yours, he says. Keep them dry. You nod. Words catch in your throat. You manage a quiet, thank you. He says nothing more, just pokes at the fire with a stick. And in that silence, in the hush of cold stars and drifting ash, you understand something new. This life is not about glory. It's not about victories or honors, or songs sung around feasting tables. It's about carrying on. One task at a time. 1 mile at a time. 1 breath, even when the air stings. You are a squire. And the road, however long, is yours to walk. The sky is the colour of old pewter when you wake. Flat, cold, and indifferent. Dew clings to your cloak and your lashes. Around you, the camp stirs to life with the sounds of soft movement. The rustle of canvas, the hiss of embers coaxed back to flame, the low murmurs of men speaking just above the chill. A raven calls from a bare branch above the clearing, its cry sharp as flint. You rise slowly, your muscles stiff from a night spent curled on damp ground. The warmth of the fire never quite reached you, not fully, and the cold has settled into your bones like a guest who won't leave. You brush the dew from your sleeves and begin the morning routine, folding your blanket, tightening the straps on your pack, checking your mount. By now, it's second nature. Your knight is already awake, standing just beyond the edge of the trees, his back to the camp. He watches the road, arms crossed, his cloak moving gently in the morning breeze. You don't disturb him. You simply join him, standing a pace behind, silent. You're not told where you're going next. You don't need to be. You've learned to listen for decisions in body language, in glances, in the rhythm of preparations. When your knight moves, you move. When he mounts, you follow. And today, you ride not with a full company, but as part of a scouting trio. Just your knight, a grizzled older man named Emmerich, and yourself. You ride quietly, hooves muffled on the dirt path, the trees pressing in on either side. The forest here is dense and damp, filled with the scent of earth and wet bark. There are no birds today, no foxes darting between trees, only the sound of wind threading through branches and the distant gurgle of a stream unseen. Your task is simple. Observe and report, not to engage, not to challenge, just to see. You've become good at that. Midway through the morning, you dismount to check a trail that veers off the main road. Your knight nods to you and Emmerich follows. You walk side by side through underbrush, your boots muffled by damp leaves. You spot broken twigs, scuffed footprints in the mud, more than one man moving quickly. Emmerich grunts softly. Too many to be foraging. Your knight crouches to examine the marks. 7, maybe 8, not armored. You understand what that means. Not soldiers, not knights. Bandits or rebels. Or worse, men with no banner at all. You return to the horses and mount again, now more alert. The sun never fully breaks through the clouds, and as the light fades, toward afternoon, everything around you begins to feel more uncertain, more watchful. The road curves, and with it, your knight raises a hand. He sees something. You dismount again, quieter this time, and creep forward, crouching beside a tangle of brambles. Through them, in a hollow just ahead, you see a faint thread of smoke curling up into the branches, a camp. 4 men seated close to a low fire. Their clothes are worn, weapons mismatched, faces gaunt. One drinks from a flask, another sharpens a blade against a rock. There's no standard, no colours, just hunger and hard eyes. You glance at your knight, waiting. He watches a long moment, then turns away. Leave them. You don't ask why. You don't have to. They're not a threat now, not yet. And maybe they're only hungry men, not killers. Maybe. You slip away silently. The ride back is slow. The cold deepens. You feel it most in your fingers, even with your new gloves. Still, you don't complain. You never do any more. That night, the camp is quiet. No fires, no songs, just bread and cold water. You sit near your knight, wrapping your cloak tighter around your shoulders, staring up through the branches at the stars. It's on nights like these that you begin to wonder what knighthood is really made of. It's not gold or banners or cheers from peasants. It's patience, endurance, long silences and cold meals, and watching things that hurt your heart without letting your hands shake. Your knight speaks softly beside you. Do you remember your first day? You nod. Yes, you've changed. You don't know what to say to that, but you feel the weight of it, like a mantle settling on your shoulders, quiet and sure. You'll change again, he adds. That's the only way to last. The next day is much the same. Scouting, observing, returning. The land seems emptier with each passing mile. More abandoned cottages, more fields gone to seed. You find signs of camps that have already moved. On, ashes cold, prints washed away by rain. And then, on the third day, everything changes. It begins at dawn. You are roused by a sharp whistle, followed by the hurried clamour of boots and shouting. You sit up instantly, your breath catching in your throat. Your knight is already standing, strapping on his gear. "There's smoke on the ridge," he says, "and riders." Within minutes the camp is in motion. You help saddle the horses, your fingers fumbling despite yourself. You mount, heart thudding, and follow your knight toward the crest of the hill. When you reach it, you see it clearly. A farmstead, half a mile off, burning. The roof is gone, flames curling up through what remains of the rafters. A barn nearby smoulders. Figures move around it, some on foot, some mounted. You can't tell if they're looters or survivors or both. Your knight signals the others to hold position. He surveys the scene through narrowed eyes. "We'll go down, just us." You follow. The approach is careful, calculated. When you arrive, the figures scatter. A few drop what they were carrying and vanish into the woods. Others shout warnings and retreat. There's no battle, just smoke and ash and the echo of chaos. You help douse what fire remains with water from the well. Your clothes are soaked through. Your hands are blackened. You cough, the smoke clinging to your lungs. Inside the barn, you find no animals, just scattered straw and signs of a struggle. In the cottage, you find a family, or what's left of them. You turn away quickly. You don't need to see everything. You already know what happened. You help dig the graves. The rest of the day passes in a haze. There's nothing to chase, no enemy to strike, just the aftermath. Your knight orders a cairn raised. You pile the stones in silence, one after another, until your arms tremble. That night, no one speaks. The next morning, you ride again. More fields, more silence. But your knight is different now. His jaw is tighter, his eyes darker. By midday, you reach another village. This one is intact. Walls still standing, gates shut tight. But the people inside won't open them at first. They shout from behind the wooden palisade, voices thick with fear. You watch as your knight rides forward alone. He speaks calmly, clearly, raising no weapon. He removes his helm so they can see his face. After several tense minutes, the gates creak open. You're allowed inside. The village is tense. Children stare. Women clutch bundles of kindling like clubs. The men speak with clipped tones, eyes darting to the road. "They were here," the reeve tells your knight. "4 days ago. Took our food, one of our oxen. Said they'd come back. Help distribute what supplies you can spare. Dried meat, a few iron nails, a coil of rope. It's not enough, but it's something." Before leaving, your knight kneels to speak with a boy who's been watching you. The boy's cloak is patched in 6 places, and his eyes are far too old for his face. "Can you hold a sword?" your knight asks him softly. The dear boy shakes his head. "Good," your knight says. "Don't learn yet. You leave before sunset. That evening you write your first message. Not a copy, not a dictated note. A message of your own, to be sent by rider back to the castle. A report of what you've seen. Your knight watches as you fold the parchment, seal it with wax and hand it over. "You've earned your ink," he says. "The words stay with you." That night sleep is heavy and dreamless. You dream not of battles or glory, but of the boy in the village, the farmstead in flames, the silence of a field with no birdsong. This, you now understand, is the life of a squire, of a knight, of anyone who serves not with hope of reward, but because someone must. Morning returns with the quiet stubbornness of winter's breath. You wake to find a thin crust of frost on your cloak, the edges of your blanket stiff with ice. Around you, the camp begins to rouse like a beast reluctant to move, slow, groaning, wrapped in the aching rhythm of another day that promises little but cold road and silence. You sit up slowly, brushing the frost from your shoulders, and stretch your aching arms. The ground has not forgiven you for sleeping on it. Your back cracks as you move, a quiet protest. But you say nothing. No one does. Pain is expected now, just another garment you wear beneath your cloak. The embers in the fire pit still smoulder, faintly. You crouch and coax them back to life with a handful of dry twigs and steady breath. The flame sparks weakly, then grows, and soon you have enough heat to warm your hands. You huddle over it for a moment, not out of luxury, but function. You'll need your fingers today. Your knight appears from behind the canvas flap of his tent, already belted and cloaked, eyes scanning the tree line. He nods toward the east. We move at first light. You nod, swallowing the stiffness in your throat. A pot of oats is passed around, barely more than paste, but it fills the hollow in your belly. You eat it slowly, chewing without thought. The others do the same, faces drawn and pale in the dim light. There's no talk of home, no banter. That sort of warmth has long since bled away from these road-weary men. Today, you'll be riding toward the old river pass. There's rumour of movement. Unmarked riders spotted near the southern bridge, where the forest runs dense and the road narrows to a whisper. It may be nothing. It may be something. You've learned that in these lands, rumour and danger often share a shadow. You pack quickly, your hands moving by habit. You check your horse's tack, tighten the girth, adjust the saddle roll. Your gloves, though patched, hold strong. You're grateful for them. Cold fingers fumble weapons. Cold fingers drop reins. Your knight mounts. You do the same. The road east is half frozen, a hard ribbon through the woods. Trees rise on either side, tall and bare, their limbs clawing at the pale sky. The horse's hooves crunch softly on the brittle ground. A squirrel darts across the path, startling one of the younger mounts. You steady your reins, calm your breath. You pass an abandoned roadside shrine. A weather-worn statue leans forward beneath a sagging roof of thatch, its face cracked by time. Someone has left a small bundle of herbs at its feet, dried and withered now, but carefully bound. You wonder who left it, and why. As the morning wears on, the wind picks up, threading through the branches and tugging at your cloak. You hunch your shoulders and press on. The sky begins to thicken with clouds, and the light takes on a silvery tone that makes everything feel both sharper and farther away. You arrive at the river pass just past noon. The water runs low and cold, bordered by frost-rimmed stones. The surf bridge is old, wooden, narrow, barely wide enough for a cart. It creaks with age, and beneath it the river whispers like a secret. Your knight raises a hand, signalling the men to halt. You dismount and step lightly, scanning the undergrowth near the bank. You see hoofprints, deep and recent, not your company's. He kneels to inspect them, fingers brushing the frozen ground. 4 riders, lightly shod horses. They crossed 2 days ago. You glance downstream. The trees lean close over the water there, the perfect place to disappear. You cross the bridge one by one, weapons loose, eyes watchful. On the other side the forest grows thicker, the road little more than a trail now. The company presses on in a tighter formation. A few hours later, you come upon the remains of a campfire, long since extinguished but not old. Scraps of cloth lie in the leaves, and a broken clay flask rests near a tree. You find no bodies, no tracks leaving, just absence. It unsettles you more than it should. That night, you camp near a rocky outcrop overlooking the river. The wind howls through the gap like a beast in mourning. You build the fires high and huddle close. Your knight stands watch longer than usual, staring out across the trees as though expecting the dark to answer back. Before you sleep, he speaks. If we're attacked, don't run to me. You blink, unsure if you heard correctly. Find cover. Guard the horses. Use what you've learned. You nod, slowly. Yes, my lord. He says no more, and returns to the edge of camp. You lie in your cloak, eyes on the stars, trying to settle. Your heartbeat. It's not fear, not quite, but it's close. Sleep comes in fits. You dream of hoofbeats in the dark, of smoke without fire, of footsteps you cannot follow. When you wake, it's still night. The wind has eased, but the cold has not. You rise quietly, stoke the fire, and sit near it, waiting for dawn. The next day is worse. By midday, a scout returns to camp with news. A homestead not far from the road, ransacked. 2 farmers dead, 1 missing. No signs of who did it, no survivors. You ride there with your knight, the silence between you stretched taut. The homestead is as described, a stone cottage with a collapsed door, a plough overturned, chickens scattered silent. You search the area while your knight walks the perimeter. Inside you find the bodies. You don't linger. You step outside and breathe cold air until your stomach steadies. Your knight finds tracks. Boot prints again, 5 sets, heavy, heading northeast. He studies them for a long time, then turns to you. Will follow. You ride hard through the afternoon, across uneven terrain and over frost-hardened ground. The tracks stay fresh. It's clear now. Whoever you're following, they're not hiding anymore. They're moving openly, boldly. At dusk, the clouds finally break, and snow begins to fall. Light at first, soft as feathers, but persistent. The world turns quieter, blurred around the edges. Your hands grow numb on the reins. Your horse snorts steam with every breath. You crest a hill just as the sun vanishes completely. And there, in the valley below, you see it, a small camp, firelight flickering between tree trunks. Tents, movement, 6 figures, perhaps 7. Your knight signals a halt. He looks to you. Ride back to the others, bring them here. You hesitate only a second, then turn your horse. The ride back is hard. Snow thickens, covering the tracks. You focus on the trail. counting trees, watching for landmarks. When you reach camp, your voice is hoarse, your face raw from wind. The captain orders the men to arm. Within minutes they are mounted and ready. You ride back in darkness. When you reach the hilltop again, the camp is gone. Only embers remain. Your knight curses softly. Too late. You search the area, find nothing but ash and boot prints heading north. The snow erases everything by morning. That night, you sit by the fire, drying your gloves, thinking of the farmer's empty home. The broken flask by the river. The boy in the village who didn't know how to hold a sword. You understand something new. Knighthood is not about what you save. It's about what you try to. The effort, even when you fail, especially then. Snow is no longer a gentle presence. It is a weight now, a constant hush layered upon everything. The trees, the road, your shoulders. It mutes the world, wraps it in silence so complete that even the horses step more softly. The sky above is leaden, the clouds hanging so low they seem to brush the tops of the bare trees. The forest, once full of colour and chatter, has become a white cathedral of stillness. Every branch is draped with soft frost, every footprint behind you swallowed by falling flakes. It has snowed all night and continues into the day. Your cloak is stiff with cold. Your fingers, even inside your gloves, have gone from aching to numb. You have not felt your toes since before dawn. Still, you ride. You are deeper into the borderlands now, where fields have given way to hills, and the villages are fewer, smaller, quieter. People here are less likely to open their doors, and when they do, they look not with curiosity, but with suspicion. Word travels fast, and tales of riders in the woods and homes burned in the night have reached even these hills. Today, your company is down to half the men it had when you first set out. Not because of death or battle, though you know those will come, but because detachments have split off, riding to patrol different edges of the land. Your knight remains the central point of this smaller group. You, as ever, remain close. He hasn't said much in days, not since the camp was found abandoned in the valley. Since then, he has grown more focused, more withdrawn. He does not ask you to sharpen his sword any more. You do it without being told. He does not order you to clean the armor. You do it before the frost sets in. In return, he speaks in shorter commands, more trust than oversight. You no longer feel like a boy in borrowed boots. You feel tired, steady. Today's road leads through the pine forest near the boundary stones, a place of tall trunks and deep snow, where the wind moves between. The trees like a whispering ghost. The horses sink ankle deep, and the journey slows. No one speaks, not even the birds. A few hours before noon, the lead scout signals. Tracks again, this time fresh. You dismount and crouch low beside your knight. He points to the ground where the snow has been disturbed in a hurry. Scuffed, smeared, not yet frozen again. 2 men, he says quietly. Running, you study the prints. He's right. The stride is long, the depth uneven. Someone was fleeing, not mounted, on foot. He stands. We follow. The trail winds through narrow paths between the pines. You walk now, leading your horse by the reins. The snow deepens as the terrain rises, then falls again toward a shallow ravine where an icy stream curls lazily. Across it, tangled bramble and half-dead brush suggest recent movement. You cross carefully, the stream cracking beneath your boots. And there, among the tangled undergrowth, you find him. A man, barely older than you, cloaked in rags and shivering violently. One foot is bare, the other wrapped in what looks like a torn bit of sackcloth. His hands are scraped raw. He holds no weapon, only a small cloth bundle clutched to his chest. Your knight steps forward slowly, his blade still sheathed. The man flinches, tries to stand, fails. No fight here. Your knight says, "What are you fleeing from?" Man's lips are blue. His breath is fast and shallow. He speaks with difficulty. "Raiders. Took the village, burned it, killed most. I ran." Your knight crouches beside him. "Where?" The man gestures weakly. "South, by the old chapel. 5 miles. They stay there. Shelter." Your knight nods. "How many?" 10, maybe more. They have bows, horses, armor from dead knights. He looks directly at you then, his gaze sudden and sharp. "You're young," he whispers. "Don't go." You don't answer. They wrap him in a blanket and tie him to a horse to be taken back to the last village for care. 2 men ride with him. You watch them go, disappearing between trees, leaving nothing but hoofprints behind. The rest of you prepare. To move, there is no counsel, no long discussion. Your knight simply says, "We ride." The approach to the ruined chapel is long and tense. The sun begins to lower behind grey clouds. The sky is bruised with fading light, and snow falls thicker now, clinging to every surface. You tie your horse further back among the trees and proceed on foot. The forest grows denser near the ruins, the brush stiff with frost. You crawl part of the way, your cloak catching on low branches. The cold no longer feels sharp, just deep and constant, like a weight pressed into your bones. And then through the trees you see it, the chapel, once a quiet place of prayer, now blackened and broken, its steeple half collapsed. Fire damage darkens the stone. Tents have been pitched against its walls, horses tethered in a rough corral. Figures move near the fire, armoured in mismatched plates, their laughter harsh and bright. Raiders, you count 9, perhaps more unseen. Your knight watches with narrowed eyes. He whispers to Emmerich, who nods and slips away. Signal the others? We surround them. At dawn, you remain in the woods overnight. No fire, no words, just waiting. The cold reaches. A new depth. Your limbs move stiffly. Your breath clings to your face. Your heart beats slow and hard. You don't sleep. You just wait. At first light, the signal comes, a bird call, low and sharp. Then movement, quiet, calculated. The knights descend on the ruins like mist. It is not your first skirmish, but it feels different. Not because of the scale, but because of the quiet. The method, you do not charge. You wait in the trees guarding the rear, watching for stragglers. Holding your breath, the sounds come. Shouts, the clash of steel, the cries of startled men. Then quickly, silence. When it's over, you emerge. Bodies lie in the snow, most of them raiders. A few of your own, wounded. The chapel is quiet again. You help drag the bodies to a trench. not for punishment, just necessity. The ground is hard, the snow deep. You use shovels when you can, hands when you must. Later, your knight sits on the chapel's broken step, his eyes on the horizon. You sit beside him. Neither of you speaks for a long time. Then he says softly, "This is what it is. Not banners, not tournaments. This." You nod, you understand. And even as your body aches, and your hands are blistered, and the cold gnaws at the edges of your thoughts, you know that something in you has settled. Not hardened, but rooted. You are no longer watching this life from a distance. You are in it. The chapel is quiet now. The snow has stopped falling. What remains is a thick white hush covering the roofless stone and the frozen graves that encircle the small ruin. Morning comes reluctantly, stretching its pale light across the battered camp, revealing every dented helm, every rusted blade, every weary face. Crows have begun to gather in the trees nearby. They wait patiently, black shapes against the new day. You wake beside the hearth's ashes, your cloak stiff, your legs curled into yourself. Sleep came late and left early, and what dreams you had were scattered and strange, half memories of home, voices of people whose names you're starting to forget. You sit up slowly, brushing snow from your shoulders, and glance around. Some of the others are already moving. Emric leans against a stump, binding a wound on his forearm with a strip of torn linen. Two squires gather firewood in silence. Third stares into the white distance, lips moving faintly, maybe praying. Your knight stands alone, as always, near the edge of the tree line. His breath curls faintly in the cold, his sword belted at his side, his posture unchanged. He's been like that since the skirmish. Alert, silent, taut as a bowstring. You approach him carefully, your boots crunching softly in the frozen crust. They're burying the last of the men, you say. He nods once. Good. You wait a moment before asking, "What now?" His eyes remain fixed on the woods beyond. We return. You blink. Back to the castle. No. He finally looks at you. Back to the village, the one the raiders struck. You nod. Of course, not every journey ends in bloodshed. Some must end in answers. The camp is broken down slowly. Horses saddled, rations divided. One wounded man is lashed to a sledge for the return. Another, wrapped in a burial cloak, is placed beside the chapel for the priests who may one day return. When you ride out, the sky is clear and blue, deceptively peaceful. The sun glints off every snowdrift like polished silver. It is beautiful, and it is cold, and it does not care. The road winds through the forest, then opens again into frozen fields. The trees grow thinner, the wind stronger. A fox watches you from a distant rise before vanishing into the underbrush. You ride without speaking. When you reach the village, it is even smaller than you remember. The smoke from chimneys is thin. The fences sag under the weight of snow. But people emerge slowly as your company approaches. A child runs ahead. An old woman peers from behind a shutter. The reeve, bundled in a patched cloak, walks forward, his hands clasped tight. Your knight dismounts first. "It's done," he says. The reeve's shoulders drop. A visible breath escapes his lips, and something in his expression unknots. "Thank you," he says. There is no cheer, no celebration, just a slow exhale of relief, the kind that follows dread too long held. You help unload what little you brought back. 2 spare blankets, a few loaves of bread, the salvaged tools from the raider camp. It's not enough. But again, it's something. You're given a place to sleep in the barn that night. Straw, dry and relatively warm. You curl under your cloak, your sword resting beside you. And for once, you allow yourself a long breath. Your body aches less than before. Your fingers, though cracked and bruised, are steady. You dream of fields in springtime, of sunlight on toys, stone, of silence that doesn't feel heavy. In the morning, the villagers offer a meagre breakfast, stew with root vegetables and black bread. It tastes better than anything you've had in weeks. You eat beside the fire, watching steam rise from your bowl. Afterward, your knight asks you to walk with him. You move slowly through the snow-packed lanes, past homes with smoke drifting from crooked chimneys, past children tossing pine cones and laughing despite the cold. You can feel the eyes of villagers on you, not with fear or awe, but something simpler. Curiosity, gratitude, recognition. Near the edge of the village, your knight stops beside a small chapel. This one still whole, the bell above its door rimmed in frost. "This is the kind of place I came from," he says quietly. You glance at him. "Before I was taken in by my knight," he continues, "a village like this, snow like this, same cracked doors and bent fences, same faces." He looks out at the fields. "I wanted more than this. But now," he trails off, "you wait. I wonder if I'd have been better off staying." You don't know how to respond. Not exactly. So you say, "Would you still be you?" He chuckles softly. "No, but maybe that wouldn't be so bad." You walk back in silence. That afternoon, your company prepares to leave. You tighten saddle straps, distribute rations, mount your horse with practiced grace. You glance back at the village as it disappears behind you, the chapel bell glinting. In the distance, you travel west this time, toward a lesser-used road that winds along the river's frozen edge. The air is crisper here, the snow deeper. You pass a ruined mill where icicles hang like teeth from the eaves. You cross narrow bridges and hear only the groan of frozen timber beneath your horses. One night, you camp by an old watchtower, long since collapsed. You sleep against the stone foundation, the firelight dancing across its cracked surface. The wind howls through the broken windows, but you feel safe there, sheltered. Your knight wakes you before dawn. "Come with me." You follow him without question, boots crunching softly in the snow. He leads you to the edge of a frozen pond, where the sky above is just beginning to lighten. He draws his sword. "Attack me." You hesitate. "My lord, you've trained enough. Now fight." You draw your blade. It feels heavier today. Or maybe your arms are simply tired. You circle him slow. He doesn't move. You strike first, careful, measured, a horizontal sweep. He parries with ease. The clang of steel breaks the morning hush. You reset. Strike again. He blocks, moves, steps around you, tests your defense. You hold longer than you expect. When you tire, he lowers his sword. "You're ready," he says. "For what? For whatever comes." The words settle over you like a warm cloak. You walk back to camp in silence, your sword sheathed, your breath steady. The road stretches for 2 more days. Quiet, cold, long. Then one morning, as dawn breaks silver over, the hills, you see it, the castle, rising from the mist like something dreamed. Its towers sharp against the sky, its banners snapping faintly in the breeze. Home, or what passes for it now. When you ride through the gates, stable hands rush forward. Pages scramble to take saddlebags. Your horse is led away. And you stand beside your knight in the courtyard, watching your breath spiral into the air. No one cheers, no horns sound. But the steward approaches with a scroll and a bow. The knight accepts it, reads, nods. He turns to you. There's to be a knighting soon. Another squire. Not you yet. You nod. Not with disappointment, but understanding. "I've put your name forward," he adds, "for next winter." You look at him. You've earned it. And then he walks away, his cloak catching the morning. Light, you remain standing in the snow, sword at your side, cloak wrapped tight. And for the first time you truly feel it, that this path you've taken, as bitter and cold and bruising as it has been, is no longer something you are merely enduring, is something you are becoming. It is deep winter now. The castle walls groan beneath the weight of snow piled high against their bases. Icicles hang long and still from every stone arch, and the wind that slips through the courtyards carries a quiet that seems older than speech. Within these thick walls, heat is a rare comfort, something you find only near the hearths, and even then, only briefly. Most of the castle lives in layers, wool, linen, and cold breath curling above your bowl of broth. You have returned, but nothing about your days has grown easier. If anything, your duties have expanded. With your name now whispered among those to be considered for knighthood, you are watched more closely. By knights, by squires, even by servants. You are expected to be stronger, more silent, more skillful. You polish not only your master's armor now, but your own. You tend to 2 horses. You rise before dawn. You train after sunset. There is no ceremony to this new status, only expectation. Each morning begins with the clang of bells from the lower gatehouse. You are up with the first call, pouring icy water over your face to wake yourself fully. Your limbs ache in ways you no longer notice. Your hands have lost all softness. You eat quickly, flatbread and cheese, perhaps a strip of dried venison if you're lucky, and then head to the training yard. There, the air rings with the sound of steel on steel, of barked orders and pained grunts. The snow has been packed, down by countless boots, into a slick grey surface, and every fall comes harder than the last. You spar with other squires under the watchful eye of the master-at-arms, a broad man with a voice like gravel, and a scar where his ear once was. He does not praise, he simply corrects. Your blade moves faster now. Your balance is better. You've learned to strike without hesitation, and to take a hit without flinching. It is after one such session, your brow bleeding, your forearm throbbing, that your knight approaches from the colonnade above. He says nothing of your injury. He simply watches as you clean your blade, then nods once, before disappearing through the hall. That nod carries more weight than applause. After training, you return to your other duties. You carry messages. You inventory stores. You mend saddle, straps. You assist the quartermaster in measuring rations for the outer guard. It is endless work, and yet somehow it still leaves time to think. You think often now. You think of the chapel in the snow, and the ruined villages, and the faces of those you could not help. You think of the boy in the village who didn't know how to hold a sword, of the man in the ravine who ran with a cloth bundle to his chest. You do not think of home as often as you used to. When you do, the memories come like echoes, half familiar and softened at the edges. The smell of baked apples, the scrape of your father's boots on the threshold, the sound of your mother's voice calling you in from the pasture. You wonder who you would be now had you stayed. One evening, after your tasks are complete, you sit beneath the battlements with a candle and a letter from your father. The script is uneven, the ink faded. He writes of simple things, crops, weather, the price of grain in the market. He says they are proud. He says the village priest prays for your safety. You fold the letter carefully, placing it back into your cloak. You do not cry. You have not cried since that first month, when the older boys laughed and your feet bled through your boots. Tears are rare now, and when they come, they do so in silence. That night, your knight sends for you. You find him in his chambers, near a hearth that smokes more than it burns. He is unarmoured, seated in a chair with a goblet in one hand and a sheaf of parchment in the other. "You'll serve as my shield-bearer for the coming procession," he says without preamble. You blink. "For the winter vigil?" He nods. "The lords gather in 2 days. I'll ride at the head. You will ride behind." You nod. "Yes, my lord." He gestures to the parchment. "You will also compose my speech." You pause. "I've read your reports," he says, without looking up. "They're clear, thoughtful. Use that. Speak as I would, not how you think they wish to hear." You nod again. He dismisses you with a glance, and you return to your quarters, heart beating fast, not from fear, but from something quieter, deeper. Trust. It has been given to you, quietly and without fanfare. The next 2 days pass in a flurry of preparation. You polish armor until your arms go numb. You review the speech again and again, rehearsing phrases aloud until they roll from your tongue like water. You help groom your knight's steed, then your own. On the morning of the procession, the sun rises over the frozen fields with a faint orange glow. The castle gates open with a groan, and the great lords of the region ride out in a slow, solemn line. Your knight leads them, his cloak lined with wolf fur, his sword strapped across his back, his bearing as still and cold as the weather. You ride one pace behind him. The townsfolk line the road, bundled in furs and scarves. They do not cheer, but they watch. Some bow, some nod, some simply stare, their eyes unreadable. When the procession halts at the temple square, your knight dismounts. You follow, standing just behind him as he approaches the stone dais where the vigil will begin. The speech you wrote is in his hands. He reads it aloud to the gathered crowd. His voice is low and steady, echoing off the stone. He speaks of duty, of winter, of those who serve not for glory, but for the sake of others. He does not embellish, he does not flatter. When he finishes, the square is quiet for a moment, then a murmur, a wave of quiet approval, a nod from the high priest. You exhale, slowly. That night, the vigil begins. You are not permitted to attend the inner chamber, but you remain outside with the other squires. A brazier burns nearby, its heat barely reaching. You sit close, huddled in your cloak, watching the fire shift. One squire hums a hymn under his breath. Another speaks of a dream he had, in which he fought a bear and won. No one laughs, the night deepens. You think of the chapel again, the stillness, the snow falling softly over stone. You think of the lesson your knight once gave you by the frozen pond. You think of all the things that did not kill you, and all the things that nearly did. And in that moment, you realize, knighthood is not a reward, it is a scar. It is not a finish line, but a weight you carry with you until your last breath. And you're not ready for it yet, but you will be. The days after the winter vigil are colder still. A new frost grips the flagstones each morning, sheathing them in a thin sheet of glass that shatters beneath boots and hooves. The castle breathes steam like a great beast, its kitchens boiling through the long dark, its chimneys coughing into the grey sky. The lords have mostly departed now, their retinues dwindling to frost-bitten banners and hoarse war horses. What remains is silence and work. You begin your mornings now in the armory, where steel smells sharp and oil coats your fingers before you've spoken a word. Your own chainmail is being resized. The smith, old Wren, whose hands are more scar than skin, tells you without looking up that it's time. Too broad in the shoulders now to pass as a boy, he mutters. Took longer than most. But here you are. You nod. You thank him. You carry on. You do not celebrate. The tasks remain the same. Hauling water from the well before dawn, scrubbing tack, mending tears in the woolen lining of your surcoat. But something has changed. You notice it not in the way others speak to you. Still brief, still firm. But in what they ask you to do. You're trusted with more. You're given the roster of night watches to post. You're asked to carry messages to the quartermaster rather than fetch logs for the fire. The older squires have begun to nod when you pass, not mock, and once, just once, a page who dropped his pail of turnips called you sir without thinking. You didn't correct him. Your knight calls on you more frequently now, not for errands, but for counsel. He asks your thoughts on the stewards, tax complaint, on the patrol routes for the western woods, on whether the baker's son might be taught to ride, even with that crooked leg. You do not know all the answers, but you try. You offer what you can. One evening, he invites you to dine in his private chamber. A small fire crackles, and simple fare is laid on the table. Root stew, thick bread, and dried meat softened in spiced wine. He pours you a measure, barely, a sip, and waits until you're seated to speak. You'll be presented at the spring watch, he says, 2 months from now. You stop chewing. If the others approve, he continues, you'll take your oaths. You nod slowly. I see, he looks at you. Are you ready? You think of the cold nights by the chapel, the abandoned homesteads, the raiders in the forest, the weight of armor you cleaned before you ever wore it, the sword you sharpened before you ever held it in battle. No, you say honestly. Not yet. He doesn't smile, but something shifts in his face. Good, he replies. Only fools believe they are. He refills your goblet. The conversation drifts then to matters beyond the castle. The border roads, the merchant unrest in the south, the quiet whisper of a famine blooming in the east. He speaks more freely now, not as a master to servant, but as one soldier to another. Later, as you leave his chamber, you feel the night differently. The torchlit corridors seem less like tunnels and more like arteries, alive, winding toward a future not yet decided. You sleep deeply. The weeks pass. The snow begins to melt, slowly, reluctantly. The castle gutters clog with icy water, and the courtyards turn to slush that freezes again by dusk. Your boots are always soaked, your fingers always chapped. But the air is changing. There is a softness in the sun now, and a patience in the sky. One morning, your knight sends you to the village to oversee the transport of supplies, grain mostly, and oil for the lamps. You ride alone, not because there's no one to go with you, but because he trusts you to return. The road is quiet. The trees are bare. A red fox darts across your path and vanishes into the scrub. In the village, the reeve greets you with mild surprise and offers tea laced with mint. You sit in his low-ceilinged hall, listening as he describes a collapsed roof near the mill, a sick goat, and a minor dispute over fencing between two widows. You take notes. You offer modest solutions. You promise to return with a carpenter's schedule. You do not tell him you used to dream of running from this kind of life. You ride back slowly, the cart behind you creaking with sacks and barrels. You pass a shrine covered in moss, its painted icon faded nearly white. You pause a moment to touch your fingers to your brow, not because you believe the old stories, but because that's what your knight would do. When you reach the castle, you find the courtyard humming. A training bout is underway. Squires and young knights dueling in a circle, while the master-at-arms barks from the side. You spot one boy, no older than you were when you first arrived, stagger beneath the weight of his opponent's blows. You don't interfere, but you remember. Later that week, your name is called in the chapel. You kneel on the cold stone floor as the high priest reads from the scroll of candidates. The ceremony is weeks away, but the names are set now, etched into memory, if not yet into history. You are not the youngest, but you are the quietest, the most watchful. Your knight says nothing to you after, but that evening he gives you a gift. It is a belt, plain leather but sturdy. Yours, the one I wore as a squire, he says. Don't lose it. You fasten it around your waist and nod. And for the first time, he claps your shoulder, the Vixits. Last frost breaks 2 days later. The river flows freely again, its ice groaning and splitting with a sound like distant thunder. The training yard dries. The carts begin to roll in from farther towns. Musicians, merchants, visiting nobles. The castle grows loud, alive. Spring is not yet here, but it is near enough to be believed in. And in the early light of one quiet morning, you stand alone on the battlements, the wind tugging gently at your cloak, the stone cold beneath your boots. You look out over the woods, the fields, the road curling off toward the far hills, and you feel it. The weight of all you've learned, the echo of those first nights, the aches, the bruises, the loneliness, the hunger, the memory of carrying armor, too heavy for your frame, of being told you would never endure, of watching the world from just behind your knight's shoulder. You remember it all, and you realize none of it has left you. It is part of you now. The bells ring softly in the morning mist, not the harsh clang of alarm or the midday summons, but the gentler tone reserved for days of solemn promise. You hear them before you are even fully awake, their sound winding through the long corridors of stone and straw, like distant waves lapping at a quiet shore. You sit up slowly in your cot, the same one you've slept in since you arrived, though now your feet hang well past the edge. Today is not the day of your knighting, but it is one step closer. Today is the blessing of the squires, a quiet ceremony, held only twice a year, in which those marked for the path are consecrated by the sword and the flame, and the first formal vow is taken. Not the final oath, but the beginning of the end of waiting. You rise early, dress in your best, still modest, but clean and neatly mended. A dark blue tunic over woolen trousers, the belt your knight gave you fastened firmly at your waist. Your boots have been scrubbed, your hair trimmed with a care you haven't known since your mother last took shears to it in the kitchen yard. The chapel is cold when you arrive, though fires flicker in the stone braziers lining its narrow walls. High windows let in pale beams of light. You step softly across the flagstones, each one worn smooth by the prayers of generations. You are not the first to walk this path, and you will not be the last. The other squires gather near the altar. 5 of you in total this season. There is whispered breath, nervous shuffling, the creak of tightening gloves. But no laughter. Not today. Not here. The high priest enters, robes trailing behind him like the wake of a ship on still water. Behind him walks the Grand Commander of the Order, flanked by 2 knights in ceremonial armor, helms removed, expressions unreadable. You bow as one, and the ceremony begins. There are no banners here, no drums, no feasts, just words. Quiet, ancient words that have passed from tongue to ear for longer than most remember. You kneel. The Grand Commander takes a sword. Old, simple, unadorned, save for a single mark etched near the hilt. He lays it across your shoulders once each side. Do you come in service? I do. Do you seek honor, or do you seek to honor others? I seek to honor others. Will you hold your blade not in pride, but in patience? I will. Then rise and be seen. You rise. There is no applause, only the sound of the sword being passed to the next squire. When it is over, you leave the chapel with no parade, no fanfare. Just the weight of what has been spoken, settled quietly into the fabric of your tunic, your skin, your breath. Your knight waits for you in the shadow of the cloister. He says nothing at first, simply looks you over once, head to boots, and gives a quiet nod. Then, with a faint half-smile, now the work truly begins. You spend the rest of the morning in the lists, sparring again, this time against full knights. You are no longer tested for your form. You are tested for your thinking. They make you fight in snow-melted mud. They give you dull blades and tell you to disarm men who weigh twice what you do. They force you to fight in silence, in pairs, back to back, blinded by a hood. You lose most of these trials, but not all. By mid-afternoon, your tunic is soaked through, your boots a wreck, your shoulder bruised. You sit on a bench near the stable wall, steam rising faintly from your hair, your fingers resting on the hilt of your sword. The same sword you've carried these last months. Still not your own, not yet, but familiar now. Balanced, trusted, your knight joins you, leaning back against the wall, arms crossed. "Tomorrow," he says, "we ride again. You don't ask where." He glances sideways at you. There's talk of movement near the river towns. A few small raids, no banners, just desperation. You nod. Of course. He watches you for a moment longer. Then quietly, "We'll be gone a week, maybe more." You nod again. "You'll carry your own blade this time," he adds. "That makes you look up." He straightens from the wall. "Come." You follow him to the armory, its stone walls cool and dim, the forge now cold, its fire banked for the day. He leads you past racks of spears and battered helms, past chainmail coiled like sleeping serpents. Then he stops before a long chest tucked near the back. He opens it with a quiet motion, lifts a sword from within, and turns it to you. "This was mine before I took the one I wear now. The blade is simple, steel, straight, worn smooth along the grip, where years of hands have shaped it. I want you to use it until your own is forged." You take it in both hands, the weight familiar, yet new. "Thank you," you whisper. He nods once. "Don't lose it." That night, sleep is slow to come. You lie awake in your cot, the sword resting beside you, the chapel's candlelight flickering just beyond the curtain of your alcove. Outside, the wind picks up, whispering across the snow-dusted battlements, rustling the last of winter's breath through the trees. You think of the words spoken over you in the chapel, of the vow, of the promise, of the simple fact that you're still not a knight, and yet something has shifted. You are no longer just enduring the journey. You are walking it with intent, step by step, blow by blow. And in the morning, when the frost returns to the road and the castle gates grown open once more, you are ready. You mount your horse, you check your blade, you ride. Your knight leads, but this time you ride not just behind him, you ride beside him. The road stretches long before you, brown and wet where the frost has begun to retreat, lined with brittle grass and clumps of dirty snow that melt in patches like forgotten lace. The world is waking slowly, rubbing its eyes after the long sleep of winter. Even the trees look startled by their own bare branches, shivering lightly in the wind as though unsure they survived the season. You ride at a steady pace, not fast, but not the dragging plod of long months ago when your legs ached from the saddle and your thoughts ran ahead of you, restless and impatient. Now, the rhythm is part of you. The quiet thud of your horse's hooves, the leather creak of reins, the soft breath that clouds before your face, all of it as natural as your heartbeat. Your knight rides beside you as promised. He says little. He rarely does. But there is a shared silence between you now, one that no longer feels like distance. It feels like rhythm. like understanding. The others ride behind. 4 knights, 2 squires, and a page with bright eyes and a too big tunic. The page reminds you of yourself in those early days. Too eager, always watching. You travel southwest along the old border road, where stone walls crumble between fields and the fences are patched with thorn branches and twine. You pass a shrine to St. Alaric, its iron cross bent, its candle holders blackened with age. You stop there briefly to water the horses, and your knight kneels at the cracked stone base, tracing a weather-worn carving of a sword wrapped in ivy. No words, just a pause, a moment of stillness, then onward. By mid-afternoon, the clouds have thickened. The sky grows heavy with low light, the colour of worn pewter. A chill wind picks up from the west, bringing with it the smell of thawing earth and something else. Smoke. Faint, but present. You and your knight smell it at the same time. He gives a single nod, then turns from the road, guiding his horse toward the slope of a low hill, where he dismounts and crouches behind the brush. You follow, tying your reins to a birch branch and easing forward on foot. From the hilltop, you can see it, a homestead down in the shallow valley below. Modest, thatched roof, a pen with no animals, a garden with no crop, and a dark smear along the far side of the house, ash trailing up toward the roof. Not a ruin, not yet, but touched by fire. Your knight narrows his eyes. No smoke from the chimney, but they're here. You don't need to ask who. You already know. You return to the others. Strategy is murmured low and fast. 2 flankers, 1 rider circling south. You with your knight approaching from the front. It is not a siege, just a warning. But warnings must be delivered carefully. As you approach the homestead, you see movement at the window. Just a flicker, the edge of a sleeve, the shadow of a face. Your knight calls out. Hello, the house. We ride with the northern. Banner. Silence. Then the door creaks open. A man steps out, young but ragged. A hunter's cloak, a sword at his side. His hands are not shaking, but his stance says everything. He is afraid. State your name, your knight says. Bellon, the man replies. This is my brother's home. Your brother home? A pause. Then, no. Then we'll wait inside. It isn't a question. The man hesitates, but only for a moment. Inside, the house is warm in that odd musty way that happens when a fire was lit long ago and never quite fed properly. The hearth is dark. A kettle rests on the stones, cold to the touch. On the table, 2 wooden bowls, one still full. A child's shoe lies under the bench. You stand behind your knight as he walks slowly through the single room. No signs of struggle, he mutters. But this wasn't abandoned. He turns to Bellon. What happened here? The man doesn't meet his eyes. They left, after the fire, to the village. Why stay? Another pause. I owed someone silver. Couldn't show my face in the market. Your knight raises a brow. You chose to squat here instead. I'm not a thief. No, but you're not telling the truth. Bellon's shoulders drop. They came through here 3 nights ago. 4 men. Armour, but not clean. Southern accents. You feel your spine stiffen. They asked for food. took what they wanted. One of them said he used to be a knight. The others laughed. Your knight nods once. And the fire? They burned the barn when they left. Just because. You feel the grip of your sword tighten under your fingers. Your knight speaks softly now. Did they say where they were going? Bellin shrugs. South, I think. Toward the stone bridge. That bridge spans a deep ravine near the old salt road. You know it. Narrow, exposed. Did they say if they'd be back? No, but I've kept watch. Your knight sighs. Pack your things, he says. You're not safe here. There's space at the keep. Bellin hesitates, then nods. You help him gather his things, what little he has. A blanket, a pouch of dried apples, a wooden flute wrapped in cloth. You wonder whose it was. His brother's? A niece? A child? The party regroups on the road. Your knight gives quick orders. The other knights will ride ahead to the bridge. You and he will stay back briefly to watch the house vanish behind them. When the house is no more than a shape in the fading light, he says, "You did well." You look at him. Your blade stayed sheathed, he adds. There was no need to. Draw it. He nods. Exactly. You ride in silence after that. The sky darkens into a dull blue, and a mist creeps over the hills as night settles in. You camp beneath a twisted yew tree near the river bend, the water rushing beneath with a sound like wind in a cavern. The page tends the fire. You sharpen your borrowed sword. Your knight sits nearby, staring into the flames. The conversation turns slowly, like a boat turning with the current. Do you miss it? You ask him finally. The days before this. He looks up. Before knighthood? You nod. He thinks a long while. No, he says at last. But I miss not knowing what it cost. You understand. Later, as sleep takes you, you dream again. Of the ruined chapel, the sound of falling snow, the distant toll of a bell no longer standing. And in the morning you wake with a start. Your sword already in hand, though there is no threat, just birdsong. And light, you pack up, mount your horse, ride south, towards the bridge, toward whatever waits. The bridge is narrow. Stone piled over stone, worn smooth by years and frost and the passing weight of hooves. Beneath it, the ravine yawns wide and silent, its bottom cloaked in mist. Somewhere below, a river still runs, fast, hidden, a quiet current through dark stone. You and your knight reach it by midday. The sky has cleared, pale and glassy above you, with high clouds stretched thin as gauze. The wind picks up here, funneling through the valley in low, restless sighs. It catches your cloak as you dismount and walk slowly to the bridge's edge. The others arrived before you. 3 knights, 1 squire, and a page stand along the eastern rise, their horses tethered nearby. One of them, Sir Erwin, a man with a hawkish gaze and a voice like bark, greets your knight with a short nod. They camped just past the southern tree line, he says. 3 men, possibly 4, makeshift tents, horses are gone. Your knight studies the tree line across the ravine. Did they see you? Unlikely. A pause. Do we speak first? You ask. Your knight looks to you. The wind ruffles his cloak. No, he says, we watch. You set up camp beneath a low cluster of pines, just beyond the hill's curve. The horses are hobbled. Fires are kept low. You eat a dry meal of oatcake and dried meat, your mouth chewing while your eyes never leave the trees across the bridge. For a long while, there is nothing. Then, movement. A figure appears just before. Dusk, tall and wrapped in a faded grey cloak, a sword at his hip. He walks slowly to the edge of the bridge, stands there, looking toward your side. You can't see his face, but you can see the way he stands. Not relaxed, not in fear either, but weary, cautious, someone used to being hunted. Your knight stands, brushing crumbs from his hands. Time, he says. He walks to the bridge. Alone, you follow, but stop a few paces behind, just far enough to see and not to interfere. The man across the stone bridge does not move. Your knight steps forward onto the first flagstone. Your name, he calls. Arlen, the man answers. Once, knight? Once, he says again. The wind rises, the trees rustle. You rode with 3 others. Arlen nods. Gone now. By choice? No, Arlen says. By their blades or mine? A silence. Why here? Your knight asks. Arlen's voice lowers. There's no one left to follow or to chase, just the bridge. Your knight takes another step forward, and Arlen's cloak flutters in the wind. And I'm tired of running. There's something in his voice. Not threat, not challenge, just gravity. You watch as your knight considers him. Then, slowly, he removes his sword belt, places it on the stone. A gesture older than memory. A gesture of truth. Cross, your knight says. Arlen hesitates. Then he does. Step by step. His boots scuff the moss-covered stone. The bridge groans faintly beneath the weight. When he reaches the center, he stops. Your knight meets him there. They speak in low voices. You can't hear the words. Then your knight nods. Arlen steps past him. Not as a prisoner, not exactly as a guest. Something between. He walks slowly toward your side of the bridge. As he passes, he glances at you. His eyes are tired, but clear. You do not speak. Later, when the fire is lit and the men rest beneath the pines, your knight tells you what you already sensed. Arlen will return to the keep. He has given up his sword. He will not take another, not unless commanded. He broke his vows, your knight says quietly. But he still remembers them. You nod, and somewhere inside you feel the shape of a lesson settle into place. It is not always the sword that makes the knight. It is what one does after it's been drawn, and after it has been sheathed. You return to the castle by the end of the week. The early blossoms have begun to appear in the hedgerows. White buds like snow frozen in bloom. The river is wide now, swollen with meltwater. The fields are green again. It is nearly time. The spring watch arrives with more noise than you expect. Trumpets, flags, young pages running breathless with errands, slipping on polished floors. Nobles from 3 counties arrive, their horses draped in velvet, their cloaks bright and clean. You are not clean. You have come from the road. Your boots are cracked. Your hands are calloused. Your sword, your borrowed sword, is worn. But your name is called, and you kneel in the great hall. Your knight places a hand on your shoulder. You've served with humility, he says. You've endured more than many ever see, and still you stand. The Grand Commander steps forward. The sword touches one shoulder, then the other. You rise now, the Commander says, not above others, but among them. Rise. All is silent. Then slowly your knight nods. The others follow. A murmur spreads through the chamber. Your name is not shouted. It is spoken, whispered, remembered. You are not a squire now. You are a knight. But the duties do not end. You tend your horse that evening. You sharpen your blade. You eat with the squires, who look at you now with a mixture of awe and suspicion. You sleep in your old cot. You rise before the sun. There is no parade, no fanfare, just a quiet morning and a new beginning. The next day, you're assigned to the Western Patrol. You ride out with a new squire of your own. He is small, thin, quiet. His boots are too big. His hands shake when he straps on your saddlebags. You don't tell him to stop shaking. You show him how to tighten the leather, how to pack the bedroll properly, how to keep the edge of the sword sharp with just the right angle of stone. You watch him from the corner of your eye as he fumbles through his tasks. He reminds you of yourself, and you remember that the path is long and cold and full of moments no song will ever capture. But it is worth walking, even when it hurts, especially then. And so, as the sun rises over the quiet fields and the frost melts into the waiting earth, our journey through the world of the knights, Squire, gently comes to a close. But remember, dear listener, the path to honour does not end at a sword's touch. It begins with the hand that offers help when no one watches. And that, perhaps, is the truest part of the tale. Sleep well now. You've earned your rest.